What's up, Professor Wergely's here. We've already merged the home page back to master. We talked a little bit about the noscript tag, but let's go ahead and go over this thoroughly. So if I want to enable my website to work when JavaScript is disabled, I need to check out this noscript tag. So first, let me enable JavaScript so we can actually search the web, and you'll actually just search noscript tag. Okay, and then W3 Schools will pop out. You can also look at Angular, how to use the noscript tag. But essentially, at the bottom of the body or wherever you put your JavaScript, at the bottom of the body, we'll have a noscript tag here. And if JavaScript is disabled, then this noscript tag will execute. And now normally it's just to say that your website won't work and that they need to enable JavaScript in order for it to work. But in some cases, you'll see if I actually disable JavaScript, if I go back to my settings, search JavaScript, go into site settings, and then look at JavaScript here and disable it, come back to W3 Schools, you'll see W3 Schools works. And if I go over here to Google, Google also works. So if I just type noscript tag, okay, Google works without JavaScript. You'll see it was slower. It actually had a message there saying that it took a second, but it still works. And this is what a good website should do. So it should at least still work. It may not look pretty, but it at least still works, even if you don't have JavaScript enabled. But if I go over back to our website and then go back over to our home page, if I don't have JavaScript enabled, Angular won't work at all because it's a single page application. I need JavaScript to take my components and put them in the app root. And I need JavaScript to take my components and put them over here in the router outlet. Okay, without JavaScript, I can't change the inner HTML. So this single page application will not work. But I can come over here to index, and at the bottom of the body, I can add some noscript tags. So I add a noscript tag and just say hello world, save it. I already have JavaScript disabled. So if I refresh my site, you'll see the actual script appear. And I can actually make a full web page here. In my noscript tag, I can put a paragraph tag. I can say hello world. Okay, I can have another paragraph tag or a div. Okay, I can make it my website here. And essentially, the website will either do one of two things. Either one, it'll just show all the content. So it'll show your home page, it'll show your about page, it'll show your contact page. Or you can actually make it work similar to what we built in the history nav or the history API. So now in the history API, we actually use JavaScript. So that's not going to work. In the first one, we use kind of like a GET request. So that's not going to work. But we can use old-fashioned just href links here. So if I do the a tag, I'm going to make a link. I'm going to have an href. Okay, so I can actually load content here. So let's say this is my home page here. So I can have an h1 here. And I can put the title, and I can use Bootstrap CSS. So I can say hello world, or this is my home page, just like we did on the history nav or the home page nav. And maybe I could use some classes here. So in my noscript, I can actually have a div and use a Bootstrap class. I can put a Bootstrap container here. Okay, I'm going to put a Bootstrap container, and I can actually make my page look nice. Just because there's no JavaScript enabled doesn't mean it has to look like crap. What we're saying is if the noscript enabled, it's okay for it not to look good because they disabled JavaScript anyway. So let's just see what this looks like. Okay, let's see what this looks like. So I'm going to use Bootstrap. Let's see if Bootstrap works. Come back, refresh the page. You'll see an H1. Okay, you'll see an H1. If there's no script, then you would actually need to have your Bootstrap link, kind of like what we did before. So if I want to add Bootstrap, I may have to add it in the old school way if I don't have a JavaScript. If I don't have JavaScript enabled, I may have to load the link manually. So I'm going to put this link here in the noscript tag. You could even put it up here in the head. Let's just see if it works. So if I refresh, look at that. Now I have Bootstrap. And what's nice about putting it in the noscript tag is it's not going to be loaded automatically. It's only going to be loaded when there's no JavaScript. Okay, so I can have a bootstrap container, and then I can have, let's say I have like an A tag here. Let's say I have my nav bar. Let's just imagine this is a nav bar, and I want to go over to my contact page. I can actually go into the assets folder and then go into, let's say, contact.html. Okay, and I'm going to close the A tag there. And then what do I want to display to the user? I'm going to display contact, just like we did in the previous lecture when we went over hash nav and history nav. In my assets directory, I can make a new file manually because this is going to be loaded when there's no script. I'm going to make contact.html. Now, I'm not going to go over the whole solution, but hopefully you get an idea here. And this could use Bootstrap as well. Okay, this can use Bootstrap as well. I could have a noscript tag here and use Bootstrap, but this page is only going to be loaded if the noscript tag executes. So I'm just going to have an H1 here, and I'm going to put my contact page. Save it. Come back over here if you want this link to work. I'll refresh. Doesn't that look similar to the history nav challenge? Click on it. You'll see it goes over to the contact page. So now the contact page could have a nav bar. Okay, and the nav bar has the same thing. Bootstrap, 3 links. Click it, it goes back. So just because JavaScript's disabled doesn't mean the page has to look bad. You can still use CSS. You can still use Bootstrap. Take a look at the history nav lectures. A lot of that code you can actually just take over and put it in the noscript tags. Okay, but make sure your page works without JavaScript. You'll see JavaScript is disabled. If I enable it, do a refresh, my Angular app loads back up. Okay, so that's kind of the idea there. Hopefully you get the idea. There's a lot of different ways to implement it. You may want to look at best programming practices. Is it a good idea to put the link here, or should I still put it in the head section? Is it a good idea to switch over to pages, or does best programming practices say to just display all the content? Okay, the more functionality that you have when JavaScript is disabled, that's going to be better. So if your page still works the same with JavaScript enabled and JavaScript disabled, that would be ultimately the best. But I would say Google has a good example here. You'll still see it's displayed in a nice format. It doesn't look quite as nice, but it still works. It still formats. It still looks decent. If I enable JavaScript, I'll go back to Google's regular page, and now you'll see how much nicer it looks. Okay, but at least it still functions. At least it still looks decent. And at least it still operates the way it originally did. And that's how a good website is made. And that's what you should do for the current challenge. Make sure your site still works when JavaScript is disabled. Okay, we went over Angular routing. We went over reactive forms. We fixed up our imports using npm install. We looked at how to use a single page application when JavaScript is disabled. Hopefully this gives you a good idea to complete the challenge. There's a few more elements that you need to do, a few more requirements that you need to do. Make sure you're committing your code. Okay, so let's do one final commit, and then I'm going to push this up to GitHub for anybody to use. So I'm going to do a git status. Okay, you'll see I added a new file, so I'm going to do a git add all. I'm going to do a git commit -a, so add all the files on the stage into this commit, and we fixed up the page when no JavaScript is enabled. Okay, do a git status. We were on master. We should have been working on dev. That's okay. And now I need to push this up. Okay, so I'm going to make a repository for it on our GitHub Classroom. So if you want the code, here's the link. And if I were doing this as a challenge, you wouldn't need to add the origin because you did a git clone. So it already has an origin. So once I am done, I've merged everything back up to master, which is what I have now. I'm going to do a git push origin master. Okay, I'm also going to push up my dev branch. I'm also going to push up my login branch. And I'm going to push up my home page branch. Okay, how do I know if I submitted all the branches? You can do a git branch -a to show all the branches. I have dev, homepage, login, and master. And you'll see the remotes are the same. I have dev, homepage, login, and master. Okay, so that's what you should do for your challenge or exploration. Make sure you push everything back up. And if you need the code for this lecture, it is here. Okay, so again, if I need this code, so let's say I'm going to this site now, I'm going to click on the code, copy the link. I actually need to move into a new directory to do this. So I'm going to make one called clone just to show you how to clone it. CD into clone. So wherever you want to clone it, I'll do a git clone. Paste the URL. Let it download the code. You'll see it's quick because it's only the code, HTML, CSS, JavaScript. It has the package JSON. If I do an ls cd into to do and try to run it, I'm not going to be able to run it. I don't have my node modules. I'm going to get a lot of errors. I need to do an npm install, or I can do an npm I. They're both the same. So npm install the node packages. You're going to do this for challenges. If I have before class content, you'll do it there. If I post code after class, you'll need to do this here. So you'll clone it, you'll do an npm install, and then you can run the code and look at the code. And in fact, you can look at the code without the node modules. So if you just want to look at the code and reference it, you don't even need to install the node modules. But if you want to run the code, then you will need the node modules. So you do an npm install, let it download, and then you can do an ng serve. You'll see there's a lot of node modules. We were using Bootstrap, material icons. We used a lot of modules there, and it just takes a lot of modules to build an Angular application. There's a lot of underlying code. When we write the code, what's nice is you're only writing, 10 lines of code, and you're creating just a few components here. But look how complicated our app was. We only have a few components here, and look how nice our app was. Okay, for the challenge, you'll probably add a navbar component as well. But I have 3 or 4 components. Each component has 20, 30 lines of code. And look how complicated the application was. We've already almost built an application that we can post. We need to have some auth guards. We need to maybe store data into a database, but we're getting pretty close. And we didn't write much code. And that's why Angular, React, and some of the other frameworks are so popular. Okay, you'll see it's almost finished. Once it's done, now you can do an ng serve. And then the page should just run just fine. One thing before we close, in the login TypeScript, once we were getting the form, we were still passing and printing the login information. This is actually a security threat. If you're printing out the username and password and somebody hacks your site, they just look in the console. They can see the username and password. Well, then they will be able to get user information very easily. So it's okay to print this out while you're developing, but you'll really want to make sure you get rid of these in the production mode, because if you're printing out username and password, then your site's going to be hacked very easily. So make sure you close that up. And yes, somebody could hack in and steal it through the JavaScript anyway, but at least you're not printing it directly to the console where even my mom could hack your site. Okay, you'll see I'm still using ng serve on the other one. So if I terminate this ng serve, come back to the new one, ng serve will now work after we do an npm install. Okay, get rid of that print, do another commit, push it up, and then that's it. You're done. Get the challenge finished. Hopefully you have enough information for the challenge. If you have any questions, you can always message me in the app or send me an email. Okay, you'll see it compiled successfully. Open it up, and then you'll see exactly what we had during the lecture today. When JavaScript's enabled, you'll see the full page. If JavaScript's disabled, you'll see our noscript version. Okay, turn it off. Do a refresh. Noscript comes out, still looks good. Still has links, can make this look good as well. Okay, so that's it. I'm going to push this up. Okay, I'm going to push this up. Let me go back to my other. Also remember for this noscript tag, I was just showing you an example. I may not be following proper programming techniques here. I just wanted to give you conceptually what ideas or some ideas that you could implement. So make sure you're following proper programming techniques. Look at this, read documentation, see how you should implement the noscript tags. Go back to the Angular documentation. Make sure you're reading these 5 and go into reactive forms and look at routing and navigation. Okay, make sure you're doing everything following proper programming techniques. Again, if you have any questions, message me in the app or send me an email. Let me push this up before I forget. And then I'll do a git push master, git push origin master. Remember, it's not a good idea to develop always on the master branch, but for just a little quick update like that, removing 1 or 2 lines, it's okay to do it on the master branch and then push it up for grading to GitHub Classroom. All right, that's it for this video. We went over routing, we went over noscript tags, we went over reactive forms. There's a lot to learn with Angular. Okay, we're going to look at more Angular as the class progresses. So stick with Professor Wergles, and we'll see you next time.